Hello everyone, I'm Victoria and today I've got another Top 5 Wednesday for you. What's Top 5 Wednesday? It is a Goodreads group that was started by Lainey from Ginger Reads Lainey and is now moderated by Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. As always, links in the description. So today's topic are our top 5 series that get better. So usually this isn't the case. Usually series kind of can be a little uneven, but in general, the longer they go, the worse that they get. But these are series that start off okay, but then reach great heights later on. So the first one I'm going to choose is the Queen's Thief series by Megan Whalen Turner. So I know I've talked about this quite a bit, but I'm going to talk about it again. So there, haha, you guys will just have to suffer through it. This is a YA fantasy that is set in sort of a Greece-inspired landscape, and we follow Eugenides, also known as Jen. He's supposedly the greatest thief in the entire world, but he, when we first meet him, is actually in prison because he was caught trying to steal something. The first book in the series, The Thief, not this one, this is the latest one. I don't have the previous ones in physical format, so I'm holding up a later one. But the first book in this series, while really good and enjoyable, it is definitely a middle grade read. It's still enjoyable, I think, for everyone of all ages, but once we get past the first book, the world really opens up and we get to see some amazing plot twists. We get to see some amazing character growth and arcs, and the series is just really fantastic. I highly recommend it. As I said, the first book, fun, middle grade fantasy, but later on we deal with some much bigger issues, and I can't praise it enough. Moving on, we have the In Death series by J.D. Robb. Again, this is not anywhere close to the first book in the series. There's like 46 books, I think, in the series so far. This is one of the later ones. I don't have any of the other ones, though, in physical format. This series starts off okay. It is a futuristic sort of procedural detective mystery thriller where we follow Eve Dallas, who is a New York City police cop, more specifically a murder cop, as she calls it. And she is investigating a death when she meets Rourke, who is supposedly the wealthiest man in the entire world. He is Irish and he runs an extensive corporation. There's some shady dealings in his background, and he's one of the prime suspects for this murder. The first couple books in the series are pretty shaky, I'm not gonna lie. Rourke comes across as your typical over-the-top alpha male, just really forcing his will on Eve. What kept me going was the character of Eve Dallas herself. She's amazing. She is incredibly sarcastic and very closed off emotionally. She's gone through some major trauma in her childhood, but she's working past it. We see her in the beginning stages of really allowing somebody into her life and into her heart. That is amazing, I will say. And another thing, we don't meet one of the main characters in this series until like 3 or 4 books in. It's kind of amazing. Character of Peabody, like I said, isn't introduced until several books in, and her and Eve, their friendship actually becomes one of my absolute all-time favorite female friendships ever. It's snarky and sarcastic and funny and amazing, and I love it. So this series definitely gets better, I will say, after the first 3 or 4. We're introduced to more characters that we get to see throughout the entire series. We get to see Rourke and Eve's backstory. It is heartbreaking and tragic, and yet also wonderful that they can overcome it, and we get to really see their character arc. I will say the quality after the first couple usually is 4-star. There are some 3-star mixed throughout, but if you're having trouble like with the first or the second book, especially with regards to Rourke's attitude, just stick with it. He never kind of loses that controlling thing, but he definitely pushes back and he eases up a lot more. Moving right along, we have The Winner's Trilogy by Marie Rutowski. So I'm just going to hold up the first book in the series just because it's easier for my poor little arms. This is a YA fantasy that's kind of set in a, I want to say, Roman-inspired world. We meet Kestrel, whose father is the general of this empire, and she is currently living in a country that was taken over by the empire, that was conquered by them, with her father, the general, and she actually purchases a slave, because slavery is a thing that's in the series. So she purchases a slave named Aaron, and essentially the story is the story of their relationship. It's got a very small setting. It's mostly told within her house and very small scale, as I said. It's mainly the story of their kind of romance that happens. I definitely enjoyed this, but I went into it knowing that those claim to be an epic high fantasy it wasn't going to be that, and it wasn't, though again, still enjoyable. But in the second and third book, the scope just opens up so much. The second book is more about sort of a political intrigue. Kestrel is sent to the emperor's palace and she has to live there and kind of navigate the waters. And then the third book, we absolutely totally expand the world. We go to some other countries that are in this fantasy world and meet other characters there, and we actually have a war, and so there's kind of some ingenious war tactics that Kestrel gets to use. That's another thing I love. Kestrel is a very smart character. She's not your typical, these covers are terrible. So she's not this knife-wielding, badass assassin lady chick. She is just really intelligent and uses her wits. She's not the greatest fighter, but she's able to make up for that deficiency by using her mind instead. So again, starts off really romance-heavy, but ends into a really nice, well-rounded YA fantasy. Next up is the Kate Daniels series by Alona Andrews, which is the pen name of a husband and wife. Again, this isn't the first book in the series. I don't have that physically. This is one of the later ones, maybe 7 or 8, I want to say. Anyway, Kate Daniels is a mercenary living in Atlanta, and in this particular Atlanta, it's sort of post-apocalyptic. Basically, magic has re-entered the world, and there is now a cycle between when magic is high and when technology is high. So when there's a lot of magic available, electronics don't really function. So you can't use your cell phone and you can't drive a car. But then when the magic is low, you can't do spells or anything like that, then electricity and everything is working. This also, we have Curran, who is the head of the pack. He is a lion shapeshifter, and I did enjoy the first in this book, absolutely. I think it's a solid 4 stars. But again, with this one, just like some of the other ones, the scope of this broadens so much. We get to understand the world, we get to understand Kate Daniels and her origins. It just broadens so much, and I absolutely love it. And especially, there is romance in it, but there's not in the first book. You're not even sure who's an enemy and who is actually an ally. And so I love that aspect, that you get this slow burn, this slow build. And I really highly recommend this. And last but not least is the Glamorous Histories by Mary Robinette Kowal. So again, I'm going to put these down. I'm going to pick up this one because I think the cover is prettiest. I really like the dress on this one. This is a Fantasy of Manners series, which basically means that it is set in a Regency-like historical period, but there is magic, and it is illusion magic. Basically, you can use it to make different illusions and tableaus, and I absolutely adore this series. The first book in this is not the best. It's more of a 3 out of 4. I did give it 4 stars the 2 times that I read it, just for sheer enjoyment. But the main character, Jane, she comes across as being very immature. She's supposed to be 28, but she is very jealous of her younger sister because she's beautiful. And it is a very small setting. It takes place in one country neighborhood, and you do get the kind of traditional Regency elements of balls and tea and that kind of stuff. And the love story between Jane and Vincent is pretty rushed, I will say. It kind of comes out of left field, but moving on from this first book, the series just expands exponentially and is fantastic. I love this series. Each book after the first one takes place on a grander scale. So we get to go to different countries. We get to go to Belgium and Italy and even Antigua. We get to go all over the world. In addition, we explore the magic more. We see inventive ways of using just this supposed illusionary, glamorous kind of magic. The relationship between Jane and Vincent is explored, and really their boundaries are pushed, and I love it. In addition to that, the stories tackle a lot of different socioeconomic issues, so each one is dealing with something different. And best of all, these are really, really well researched, and I think it shows. The author actually has a list of words that she is not allowed to use because they wouldn't have been used during the time. In her wonderful endnotes, she always goes into detail about all the different resources that she used to research, including the books and the people. And in fact, this one, look, I don't know if you can see the white balance, is probably terrible. The author actually made this dress. This is a dress that she made so she could kind of get an idea of what like Regency dresses were like during the time. Okay, maybe it was just an excuse for her to make a pretty dress, but that's to give you an idea of kind of how amazingly well researched these books are. So I would definitely recommend them. I love them so much, and I hope you guys give them a chance. So what are some different series that you found actually got better throughout the series? I'd love to know down in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.